Hi, thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about the roads of Colorado Springs. My name is Fran and I am president of Springs Choice Welcome Service. So one of the first things you may be wondering as a new resident in Colorado Springs or getting ready to move here, visit here, is do I need an all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, and what kind of tires should I have in my car? Well, I want you to know that even though we do get snow in the winter, that the roads clear up pretty quickly. Between the plowing and the sunshine that follows after a storm, it all melts off pretty quick. So you really only need four-wheel drive for a very short amount of time if you need it at all. It depends on the street that you live on. Some side streets get more dumped on because maybe they're in a drift and that doesn't get plowed. But I do recommend some good tires, and I do recommend a front wheel drive vehicle. That's really going to help you a lot. And then I'm going to put a link in the description for some more information to consider if you're making a choice and thinking you might need to change your vehicle before you live here. And I also might do another video in regards to what you can do to prepare your car, what kinds of things you can have in the car for the different types of weather that we have here in Colorado Springs, and give you some tips on the crazy weather that we have and what you can do in your car to be prepared for that. Another thing to be prepared for here in Colorado Springs is that the roads can be quite damaged in places. Some of our roads are absolutely smooth and beautiful, and other parts have lots of potholes. It's the smaller streets that you tend to find this problem. Not to say that some of our main streets don't need work as well, but due to this weather that we've talked about, there's a lot of hot and cold and back and forth with the elements. There's wet and then dry, and then when the ice melts and gets inside and then freezes, it makes the pavement crack. And then over time it just falls apart. And another thing that kind of goes along with the whole potholes is the construction. You may hear people complain of it because there is quite a bit of construction that happens on the streets here. And part of it is because our city is growing and they're trying to expand upon what we have to accommodate more traffic. And then the other part is because they need to access pipes and things that are underneath the ground, and so they're tearing up the streets. It seems like every other major intersection has construction going on, and some people find it very frustrating. Another thing that you'll hear people complain about Colorado Springs and traffic is the red light runners. So we do have a lot of people that push the limits on the red lights here, and I think my personal opinion or theory is that it has something to do with the fact that the lights at some of the major intersections could be quite long, and so they don't want to wait for a long time for the next light rotation, and they're so desperate to get in on that light that they'll run it. So to be extra safe here, I highly recommend that you do like you were trained to do with the DMV. You actually look before you cross the intersection, especially if you're waiting at a red light and the light turns green. You really need to make sure that you look before you cross. Just do it for your own safety in case there is somebody thinking that they can just go right on through that light when they're not supposed to. I just want you to be aware that Colorado Springs is growing very much in a north and south direction and an east direction, and we are growing to a point where we're wide. So our growth is happening in an outward direction, meaning that the very, very north end of what is Colorado Springs to the very south end of what is Colorado Springs, if you go from the west northwest to the southeast corner, it could take you 45 minutes on a good day to go that distance. If you're just kind of dealing just north to south, you're looking at probably closer to 30 minutes on average to get all the way, a quote, across town. So just something to keep in mind. And now that you live in a higher altitude than maybe you've lived before, you may notice some changes with your car. So your car may be suffering from its own form of altitude sickness. Of course, this will depend on the type of car you have, the age of your car, and things like that. But if you've noticed your car is acting differently now that you're here because of the different oxygen levels that we have and the altitude, you might need to visit your mechanic just to kind of get an opinion and see if they think that that could be what's going on with the vehicle. And it could change your gas mileage a little bit. I personally use a fuel saver. So this is what I use to save money on my gas. What I'm trying to say is that your car may need a little extra love now that you live in Colorado Springs. So don't be upset. Just there's definitely some things you can do to help your car be more happy with its new environment. I had mentioned in one of my other videos that the roads here can be a little misleading, and so I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about what I mean when I say that. You know, let me just get right to the examples. So we have a road here called Austin Bluffs. Austin Bluffs will kind of turn into barns, but it branches, and so it could actually feel like you're on the same street, but then it branches into a street called Barnes. And that is when you're going towards the east. When you're going towards the west, it turns into Garden of the Gods. It changes its name, and it doesn't lead you directly into Garden of the Gods as it may seem. It gets you pretty close. So if you keep taking it west, it'll get you take it you pretty much can't go any further, and then you're going to take a left to go to Garden of the Gods. But there's also the whole lake turns into Circle, turns into Fillmore thing. So Fillmore actually is a street that hits Interstate 25. So there's an exit for Fillmore, and so is Circle and Lake. But Circle and Lake are the same street. They just change names. So when you start going west on Circle, it turns into Lake. And that name is actually kind of appropriate because it'll take you to the Broadmoor, and the Broadmoor has their own, like, you know, just the whole name changing thing can be a little bit confusing. And then one of our other major streets besides the interstate is one called Powers, also known as 21. So if you go to the airport and you're leaving the airport, you'll see signs for 21. Most of the locals here just call it Powers. But it's the same road. So if you hear someone talk about Powers, they're also talking about 21. So that's good to keep in mind. It's not going to feel much like a freeway when you're in the middle of the city because there's going to be light after light after light. But then when you get up to the north end, there's a lot less lights, and it keeps more of its namesake of 21 again when you get up north. But right in the center section, it just feels like Powers, and it's a normal street that just has a lot of lights. We also have streets here that don't continue, so it's not a perfect grid, and it always intersects. What happens is there's roads that will stop, and then they'll start again. Some of those roads are Lexington up on the north end of town. If someone says, hey, this is on Lexington, just keep in mind that Lexington does end and then start again. So it's a little bit weird. And then the same thing with Tejon. Tejon stops and starts. So there's a part of Tejon that doesn't connect. Another street that lives up to its name is Academy. But keep this in mind, there's two ways to get onto the Air Force Academy, two main gates anyway, the South Gate and the North Gate. The North Gate is the gate that's used for visitors. So if you're just a visitor and you don't have a military ID card, even if you're a visitor and you have a military ID card, you don't have to use the North Gate. You can use the South Gate if you have a card. And one last road that kind of drives me a little bit crazy, but it's a good street in that it'll definitely take you to a lot of places, is Union. Union is one of those few streets in Colorado Springs that does more or less in the long run makes like a diagonal in the city, which means that it could be very, very odd because it will intersect with certain streets that you wouldn't expect it to intersect with, because again, it's not a perfect grid. Well, that concludes this video. I hope that it was helpful for you. And if you have anything you'd like to add, please leave comments down below about any of the streets that you want people to know about, or any tips that you have for people now that they're driving in a new place. Thank you guys so much for watching. I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel and give this video a like and a thumbs up, and just support us. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.